apart, speaking moistly, speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart, speaking moistly.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Speaking Moistly. It's been a little while, but that's okay. It's the summertime. Today, Greg is with me as my guest host. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, Mark?
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm also doing fantastic. So today I thought we would talk about something that is sweeping the nation, and it seems maybe a little late for this particular thing to be sweeping the nation, but we'll talk about it anyway because it's happening in real time. Yesterday, July 21st, Calgary makes masks mandatory in all indoor public buildings and public transit. And it's not just Calgary. Here's London, Ontario. Masks to be made mandatory in London, Ontario buses and taxis starting Monday. And I think they're going to mandatory masks by August 1st. And, you know, the death rate for this thing is dropping quite a lot. And the new cases dropping by quite a lot as well. I haven't seen a lot of community spread, so it seems like a really strange time to start mandating masks, in my view. What do you think, Greg?
I would have loved to see this if they did this in March at the same time of the lockdown. That I would have thought, okay, that makes sense. They're taking all preventative measures to try and prevent the spread of this virus before it gets bad. Because, I mean, I'm the person who was following this before the lockdown happened in Canada. So like I was kind of concerned about it in February and thinking, oh, why haven't we banned travel? Why haven't we talked about face masks, especially people who are going through airports, etc. But the fact that it's happening 4 months after the actual lockdown, now it's mandated. Do we have tortoise-like reflexes here, or what? And then, of course, when you compare it with, like you said, like the very low death rate now, it's I hate it. It's like, what is this all about? And then, of course, what bothers me about this conversation is we're still treating everybody the same. And it's like no leader has brought up anything having to do with age or nothing. And I think that seems kind of off the mark as well.
Yeah. I was in the same boat as you. I was following this early. I was concerned about things when no flights were stopped coming out of China. We still haven't stopped flights coming out of China from infected areas. So to me, it's a really strange thing to continue, this lockdown because it's economically very bad when you overlay what's happened in Sweden, which didn't have a lockdown, and some other countries that didn't have as drastic measures. And now, like you said, 4 months in, and now they're making masks mandatory. Well, like you, I was wearing masks when they were saying, no, masks hurt more than they help. And it didn't take me long to get sick of wearing masks. I was like, oh my God, this is awful. Like, this is awful. I'm going to take the advice of the health people and not wear a mask. It's terrible. And now they're mandating them. To me, it does not. It's the fact that the advice is so inconsistent. It's always something else. They got it wrong, and they make a really long. I mean, look at how long Miss Tam was saying that masks don't work, masks don't help, and borders don't work, borders don't help, and we've got borders closed and mandatory masks. It seems disingenuous. It's hard to believe. How can you believe a government that is so inconsistent with their advice? I don't know how to take it seriously, realistically.
Yeah, and now you're getting these people who are very they're shaming people for not wearing masks and all this, which is just a whole other can of worms. But I gotta say, just a quick anecdote. I especially since the lockdown, I have been eating at home a lot and making a lot of home cooked meals. However, I went out to pick up something from a burger place and for pickup, and there was somebody doing DoorDash or Skip the Dishes or whatever, and this person had a mask on, and this person was like, there was something wrong. Like, this person was like having trouble breathing.
Oh no!
And they were inside with this mask on, and like, I don't know if they were like kind of like heaving or whatever, and I'm just thinking like, I don't know. It's just a very weird moment where it's like, it's like maybe you've been wearing that mask all day, and
Yeah.
that's why you can't breathe. I don't know.
Go outside, take the mask off, man. Yeah, it's interesting. When walking around Walmart or walking around anywhere, stores, there have been more people without masks that I've seen recently, but I see lots of employees walking around with it down around their nose. I see employees in the break room with no masks on at all. And it's like, initially when the public order came out, break rooms weren't covered under the exemptions. I think it's interesting you can go to a break room and spread germs, but once you're out on the floor,
Yeah.
right? So you can maybe infect your coworkers, but don't infect those customers who are maybe infecting you. It just, again, the inconsistencies of this whole thing make it hard to believe. And like, they're trying to mobilize us like some military unit, and it's disingenuous. It feels wrong. It feels like I'm being taken advantage of.
It definitely doesn't feel right. And like I said, the fact that our leaders haven't brought up any sort of conversation having to do with the current death rate, having to do with your personal choice, or having to do with the age of people, because there is a consistent, it's much more deadly for people who are older, right? Like, we know this, but no leader has mentioned that at all in any sort of capacity. And of course, there's the grand kind of disillusionment that all of this effects that's going to have on our economy is not going to, cause all sorts of death and depression and all sorts of stuff. But it just seems very, very dishonest. And also, I think that there's also this weird kind of like sense of security that people have, like, oh, I have a mask on, so like I'm Superman. And the other thing I'll add is, also when I was picking up my burger, this person said something to me, and the person working said something to me, and both times I'm like, I can't hear you.
Yes.
I don't. So that's kind of amusing, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Well, it is a big deal. Like, you can't even speaking into a mask feels alien, and like trying to have a conversation with somebody, we give so many nonverbal cues with our mouth. Like when you want to start talking and you kind of not nose in, but like, I have a cricket in the garage.
Yeah.
You just went nuts. But you give nonverbal cues with your face a ton, and like, our face is important, right? And covering up our faces is, well, I mean, having masks, mandatory wearing masks in stores seems like a crazy turn. For if you look at the gun crime rate in Toronto, like, oh, you know what the best thing we can do right now is? Kill a cricket. That's the thing. Okay. And one more thing I wanted to mention. Oh, am I?
Oh, I hear.
Okay, with the crickets temper tantrum out of the way and our connection issues resolved, we're going to move into glory holes. And what a strange thing to have to, talk about with regards to Canadian politics and what the BC CDC is recommending. What a weird piece of news to like see on the Twitter feed in Canadian politics these days. But here it is. Global News is reporting, try glory holes for safer sex during coronavirus. BC CDC says. And I would imagine, I mean, really, this is where we're at. I think this is exactly where 2020 should be. What do you think, Craig?
I think there's two sides to this. I think on one side that I would hope more Canadians and more people kind of see as alarming is this role that the government is now playing of saying, of like having direct input on your sex life. Does not anybody see a problem with this? Hey, we're the government. We're going to remind you to clean your sex toys. What?
Yeah.
I actually agree with Trudeau Senior on this one. Yeah, don't come into my bedroom, government. You shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be telling me about glory holes and cleaning sex toys.
Right.
So that's one side of the fact that the government is even having input of like, we are so helpless and dumb that I need to tell you about your sex life and how to do it properly. I find that it's one disturbing point. And then the other thing, of course, is, I mean, conservatives like yourself and myself and, not just conservatives, but Canadians have voiced a concern that, I think the Canadian government is increasingly perverting Canadians and kind of casually promoting sexual deviancy. You know, people have said that. And then this comes out,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, if you want to know anything about the culture of glory holes, you know, it's not happening in clean places where masks are mandatory. Condoms aren't even mandatory where there are glory holes.
Yeah.
So to kind of casually bring up glory holes like they're part of a healthy sex life, I would have a strong disagreement there.
Yeah.
And that's a whole discussion, but
it would be it's like it's funny, except that it's hilariously not funny. Like it doesn't start with make sure you keep the refrigerator the box the refrigerator was delivered in. Like it doesn't start there. It doesn't say, but it says glory holes are typically used for anonymous oral penetrative sex according to the Urban Dictionary. But they're also an excellent way to limit physical contact during intercourse, the BC CDC says. Really? Anonymously? Listen, honey, can we get a hole in this door? Are you cool with that? I'm gonna stand in the hallway.
It's also a great way to not just to avoid contact, but also to avoid any emotional connection with the person you're sleeping with. Like you don't even know their name. That's actually kind of like why they're invented.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like it's a very strange, and we're making. I mean, I think we're making light of this, and clearly, this is a very, very strange thing for a government or anything to recommend. And it's even weirder to, see it and look at how awkward she looks. Dr. Bonnie Henry's making what she looks like she just ate a lemon. But it's very off-putting when the government is offhandedly promoting anonymous oral or penetrative sex as a preventative measure for a serious viral infection that, like, people have been under lockdown for a long time, right? And I mean, as you said, if they're engaging in accessing glory holes, sometimes they're not really worried about getting a sexually transmitted disease. So, a cough, they might not be so worried,
Yeah, and I mean, it is funny. It's really funny as an SNL skit or a Mad TV skit or something. It's hilarious, but this is Canada 2020, and it's what I find disturbing about it is someone like yourself, someone like me will see this and be very disturbed by it. Mm-hmm. But what I find even more disturbing is that other people will kind of like brush this off, and it's the slowly we inch. If you know Gad Saad, he tells that, like, slowly we're inching to this weird dystopian world where I mean, it's another thing I've seen online on Twitter, and I don't even know if these people are real or not, but they're basically like cartoon characters. But they're like, yeah, queer public sex is like the next thing that needs to happen. We need to have like queer people having sex in public in front of people. Like that's the movement. That's our battle. Yeah. And it's like, this is just going, where are we? This is
what
insane.
Happened? Yeah. It's like not even understanding really if we're talking about parody. Like, do you literally mean what you're saying, or is this like is this a metaphor for something that I'm not understanding? Is this a joke that I'm missing? No. It is. It's a very slippery slope, and I say beyond that a lot, slippery slope.
Beyond parody is something I've heard someone say, and I think we do live in a world that is beyond parody in a sense.
Well, and I mean, people then legitimize it, right? And then say things like, well, have people say all lives matter, and then consequences for that.
Oh, no. Hey, listen, no. You're kink shaming. I am kink shaming. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
There's a legalese for everything. How dare you, sir? Yeah. How dare you?
If you disagree with bestiality, like having sex with animals, you're a bad person.
There you go.
Actually, you're shaming somebody, and they're perfectly normal, sexual activity. Right. And of course, I'm kidding, but it's like that's where we're going. That's where we're headed, folks.
I think that actually is. I think that there were precedents set recently about that. Really, I think there were, but I'll have to look into it.
Let's save that.
We're gonna let sleeping dog lie. That was.
Let's not get into it today.
Oh, come on! Really? Okay.
No.
All right.
No, thank you.
That was unplanned. Okay, we'll get into CFL's Edmonton Eskimos. This This is a I know. This is a publication from the CBC from February 14th, 2020, and it says CFL's Edmonton Eskimos keep team name following consultations. And it says the Edmonton Eskimos of the Canadian Football League have decided to keep their team name despite concerns from some Inuit leaders. The club said consultations in the north provided no agreement on whether the name should be changed, and they heard a wide range of views. Okay, fast forward to yesterday, July 21st, and it says Edmonton CFL team will officially change its name. Football club to be known as EE Football Team and Edmonton Football Team until new name found. So, welcome to 2020. Listen, we talked about this. We asked everybody, and now we're going to change our name. What do you think we should be called, everyone? So what do you think, man? I don't know. There's a lot of people who are there are people who are, I've seen tweets saying, sorry, I asked you what you think, and I'm giving it more prep here, but I've seen tweets on one side saying we are Edmonton Eskimos fans, and without the Eskimos, I'm not a fan of your team. And there are other people saying, brave woke stance, brava, brava. What's your interpretation?
Yeah, I think that what people need to seriously look at is this phenomena that I think is happening here, which happens in many different ways in cancel culture and woke culture, which is all it takes to make a change like this is like 100 emails. Yeah. Like a group of people sending 100 emails, saying they're outraged, saying their feelings are hurt, saying all this stuff about how you hurt this person's feelings and blah, 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 blah. And then a pretty, somewhat significant change is being made where you're actually changing the name of a football team.
Yep.
What I think, you could talk about Redskins and maybe there's more of an argument there, but when it comes to the actual Eskimos, I was Googling this around. I was Googling like the Wikipedia article, and like Eskimo is not at all a derogatory term that I could find. Okay. So it's like, why is referencing this group of people and actually making them a mascot for a football team, giving them airtime, making them part of the spotlight, part of the actual like positive figure of a role model or of a mascot? Yep. How is that a bad thing? And I think it's so ironic that it's like, let's get rid of the Eskimos. We don't want them to be a mascot anymore because even talking about them is bad. Yeah. It's like logically your head has to explode. It's like, what? I don't even know how to keep up with this stuff anymore. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. And I saw when the Redskins changed their name, and that happened 2 weeks ago. When the Redskins did that, I saw people responding online as well, talking about how the people calling for the cancellation of the Redskins name didn't understand that it was celebrating and keeping relevant the great warriors that fought in the past in the modern arena type deal. And I thought, man, like that's a really elegant way to put that. Like, it's not mine, but I don't know where I got it from now. But that's what I think. I think we're looking at these iconic people, Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben, the Redskins, the Eskimos, all of these things that were not done to oppress, and having the history rewritten by a group of woke Marxists with an ulterior agenda is not what I'm interested in. F that. Seriously, This is unbelievable. Like,
and it's like the getting rid of Apu as well.
Yeah. And to a less, yes, I agree with you.
Well, I just mean like you could call it a stereotype, but there also is things do happen when there is an immigrant from India who owns a convenience store. It's like it's just like, let's take that story away. We don't like that story because that person's Indian and he has an Indian accent. I don't know. Is it because it's a white voice actor? Was that the problem? Or was it because his story in and of itself existing is somehow racist all of a sudden? Yeah. It's like, it's like you said, it's the erasure of not even just history, but like reality that's happening, like we're supposed to not think that there's immigrants who have come from India to own a small business. Like, that has never happened before, and we don't want to see that. I don't get it. Yeah,
it's what they're raging against, and like it's the same thing as critical race theory. If there's you understand how deep this goes. So like, if this is true, if there's a discrepancy between performance or outcome between one race and another race, the explanation is clearly white supremacy. And if there's no discrepancy, if there's no discrepancy now, but in history there was a discrepancy, then that has to be rooted out, and that confirms white supremacy. It's all it's a shell game to just say, and whatever, it doesn't matter what they find, right? Like if a white actor's playing an Indian character, that's enough, right? And like that's where we're at, right? If you're celebrating a team name or a person like Aunt Jemima in history, and that person happens to be black or a person who's a minority, I don't know, First Nations, whatever, then that's bad somehow. And like they're purposely not seeing it from the correct angle. And that's usually what our laws are supposed to keep in check, right? Like they're supposed to say, this is not legitimate. Go away, you crazy people, right? Like that's what's supposed to happen. But that check and balance is long, long gone. And so we're left with the evisceration of our culture because some people, and you, like you said, it's a very small group of people who can affect these changes. Were able to organize a mailing campaign that overwhelmed the PR, the massive PR machine of the Edmonton CFL team. Right?
Was it actually a bunch? I guessed. I don't know if it was actually a bunch of emailing. I just imagine that's how it happened.
I don't know. There's a lot. I mean, with the Black Lives Matter thing, the George Floyd thing, there was a coordinated, concerted push to make this a big deal, and regardless of the public's, regardless of what the public wanted, there was certainly the media push, the local push. There was Guelph, the city of Guelph, put out a tweet encouraging people to go down to the Black Lives Matter protest, but there were no tweets guiding people on how to go down to the anti-lockdown protest. Right? Like it's a very insidious way of encouraging one and not encouraging another. And people were like, well, I thought there was rules. Aren't there rules? Right? And apparently there are not rules. Apparently it is racist to think that there would be rules, right, around this whole thing. It's very insidious. So the rules are ever changing. And if you think you know them, well, you're not woke enough yet.
Yeah. And I think what really sucks is, the word racist really used to mean something, and it used to be used to identify like a really awful person. Yep. And now that word has been so watered down that essentially anytime somebody says something having to do with race that makes somebody else feel uncomfortable, anybody feel uncomfortable, it is now racist. And that's like it's kind of, I don't know. It's just such a strange kind of cultural paradigm we live in, where this word gets thrown around, and it kind of simultaneously, like, everyone, so many more villains are created out of like thin air, you know, in this narrative, of course, where all these racist people are running around, cheering on the Eskimos.
Yeah.
Oh my God. They talked about Eskimo people.
Yeah, and
I don't know.
Yeah, it's way worse than even you know. I'll share some links with you after about school boards and other things like that. But it's way worse than you know. Right. And with that, okay, carry on. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, with like in the funny kind of like progressive isms, there's no winning, right? Because if you give representation, then oh my God, you're culturally appropriating.
Yeah.
But if you take the representation away, then it's like, oh, now you're, committing genocide. And it's like, so basically the rules just change depending on how the feeling hits you. Yeah. And what I think maybe is a little bit more disturbing on a more, if like taking a step back from this Edmonton Eskimos thing, it's almost like the woke people kind of asserting their kind of like power, It's like, we can change the name of a CFL team with the snap of a finger. Yep. That being said, I'm really hoping that the average Canadian will see this and be like, wait, how does that help? How does not talking about Eskimos help Eskimos or help the Inuit? You know,
or help anybody.
or help anybody. Yeah.
It doesn't help anybody.
How does this move the needle?
Yeah, no, right, it doesn't. And so many of the initiatives are ineffective because the goal is not very clear, right? Like, we're going to fix racism while being racist. Okay.
Yeah, and it's shallow. It's shallow.
It's very shallow.
Speaking of Black Lives Matter, they interrupted the Pride Parade in Toronto in 2018. And they had a big list of demands. They held up the parade and they said, we're Black Lives Matter. We have all these demands. Some of them, I've read through their demands. Some of them are pretty crazy because it's like, hey, this is segregation. You want black only this, black only that, black only that.
But that's
some of them were actually like worthwhile demands, which were like kind of having more consultation with the police about this and that, or better training. And then the only demand that was actually met, and the one that they cared about the most, was banning the police from the parade. Yeah. Like, what does that accomplish? It's very shallow. It's very petty. And guess what? In my opinion, the only like reliable thing that they accomplished was creating a very visible division in the Toronto LGBTQ community. Because yes, the first Pride Parade or the first Pride celebration in Toronto was basically like rioting against cops. So like building that relationship between the LGBT and the cops was like, it's a pretty beautiful thing. Yeah. Right. And it's funny that BLM shows up and basically we're taking that unity away. We don't want to be friends with the cops anymore because of, I don't know, because we want to create division. Yeah. That's what it feels like.
That's no good. And I agree with you. And like, why continue to be divisive when, well, I know why. I know what they're doing. It's very frustrating. All right. With that, I will end the show. Thank you very much for hanging out with me today, Greg. It's much appreciated. You want to hang out again next week?
Yeah, I think I'll be around. Let's do it.
Nice. And dear viewer, thank you for watching as well. And we'll get the Prime Minister to play us out. And man, I don't know how much longer this government's going to last. I hope not very long, but we'll see. Check out speakingmoistly.co, check out canadareport.co and canadapoly.com. And Greg, do you have anything
check out my YouTube channel, put a link in the description.
Links in the description.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. The parody songs are wonderful. Okay, here we go.
Speaking moistly, keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly.